So I'm here this afternoon with new author Aidan McEntee, who has recently released a new novel, Wit and Wisdom of Northern Ireland. I'm sorry, I say novel, but it's a book. Isn't that right?
That's right, it's a book, yeah.
This is essentially sort of a history of humour and the development of humour in Northern Ireland. Isn't that right, Aidan?
It's kind of a the culture of humour through my lens.
Okay.
So kind of my generation, people who grew up in the 80s, 90s in Northern Ireland, and it's kind of that it takes the readers through a journey of humour across the six counties based on that sort of timeline. So it's kind of a lot of the material in it is it's kind of more it's quite clean and it's quite pure, based on how comedy was back then, without any external influence. So it's very Northern Irish, and as I said, it's a real journey for readers across the six counties, and it talks about how different it is from, say, Fermanagh, the sense of humour, to Armagh, for example.
But relatable too, I would imagine, even though there is differences in the humour county to county, I would imagine we all still get it. There's like a very
Yeah.
overarching Northern Irish sense of humour too, isn't there?
There is, no, there is. I was talking to like a friend about this a couple of weeks ago, and he kind of asked. He said, "Well, there must be a sort of a general sense of humour, and then as you sort of peel the onion, it differs county to county." And yeah, if you think about how maybe people from England or Republic of Ireland would view our humour, they'd see it as one sort of brand, kind of self-deprecating, a little bit dark, quite cheeky. There's a Northern Ireland brand to our humour, and then when you're in Northern Ireland or from Northern Ireland, you can go a little bit deeper and you see that actually it's a bit of a jigsaw, But when it comes together, it's quite a lovely overall tapestry of humour. But inside each county, you've got these nuances which are specific to that individual county.
Well, just on county to county, did you find Armagh as a county more relatable because that's your county where you're from?
Yeah, I'm probably out of Armagh longer than I was in
Oh,
Armagh. But
really?
yes, absolutely. Yeah, so I grew up in Armagh City, and a lot of the content within the book related to Armagh I could relate to, of course, because I'm usually from there, and I have
And where
I
are
have a
you
big
born?
network still in Armagh, so there's a lot of discussions. So yeah, I could relate to it, and comedians like Mickey Bartlett, who's from Lurgan, who I think is an amazing comedian. He's very relatable as well, and when he talks about sort of anecdotes and stories about Lurgan and Armagh and the local town, that type of humour, so completely relatable for me. But then even when you look outside of Armagh, the other counties, there's little strands of relatability within those, but they're just not as dominant as the Armagh one, for instance.
And what was it that drove you to write the book? Was it just something you've always experienced? Has humour played a big part in your life, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, it's a good question, Kelly. If we go back when I was young, back to the Jurassic period, um, the my father, he was a singer, he played in a band from County Armagh, and he would hold these um, parties, get-togethers at home, every now and again, and he'd have people coming from all over Northern Ireland because he knew people from the different counties, and they'd all come and they'd do a little performance. So the sort of the price of admission to these parties was that you did a little turn, like you read a poem, or you sang a song, or you told a joke, or you did something kind of artistic. And I would have sat sort of under the stairs like a Harry Potter vibe, watching these kind of everyday people just transform, into actors or poets, or and really incredible. And it lit a fire in me, I think, to look at this. And then throughout my life, I've gone the other way. I've gone into sort of more bread and butter corporate sort of work. But there's always been this desire to tell the story and to almost give birth to this, whatever it was, this thing, this artistic, this sort of right-brained project. And in the last couple of years, it's just come out. I think I haven't been able to contain it, and I've just said, oh, I've got to do it. And then this year really kind of was the book. It's been written in my head for 10 years, but this year is when I really managed to put it all together and get it published.
And it's funny, even just listening to you talk about that memory of your father being in the band and those sort of little performances. In a weird way, I think humour is special to all of us here in Northern Ireland. It's something we're intensely proud of. I think it's our ability to just be funny. Is that something that you noticed throughout the course of your research for this?
Yes, so I did completely. I think I did quite a lot of research overall. I mean, being very honest and being completely transparent, a lot of my research I did not for the book, because it was just, heading out, social nights out, meeting friends, going to different counties, visiting family. But as a result of that time spent out there, I gathered a lot of intelligence, input, And I think I think we as a nation know that we're funny. We know that we're quirky. We know that we're different given our history. It's not surprising. And what I've found talking to people, that there's a real I care about you moment when we're cracking jokes. We're not trying to criticize. We're not trying to be difficult. We're genuinely trying to connect, and we're trying to create a moment, with other people. So the genesis of our storytelling and joke telling comes from a desire to put our arms around somebody else and tell them tell them that you care about them. And depending on which county you go, you can come out really rapidly and fast. In Belfast, for example, and you've got a face on you like a Sunday dinner. It can be quite acerbic. Or in like in Fermanagh, where it's a little bit more droll and slow, and it becomes a bit of a tale. But it all kind of means the same thing. It's all about connection. It's all about wanting to two human beings wanting to be together.
Yeah, it's probably one of the oldest sort of psychological principles, I suppose, is that when you laugh with someone, you feel closer to them, just automatically feel more connected. But I guess in that way, and something you probably touch on in the book as well, is the healing power of humour in that sense, based on our sort of turbulent political past. Is that, do you think, is that what it's born out of, Aidan, or do you think it's something deeper?
No, I do think that's the genesis of that. You don't have to look too far back to understand or get a feeling and understanding of our history. And the book's not about our political past. The book stays away from the political side, because I think we've been in the press enough, in the past regarding the troubles and the issues. So this is a very light-hearted way, and what it's trying to say to readers is, Northern Ireland isn't one thing. It's not about that. Northern Ireland, look, it's rich, it's diverse. The people are incredible, wonderful. We're funny. We like a laugh. We're different. We're So it's almost a call to action. Come to Northern Ireland and join us and spend time with us, and you'll experience what we experience. Maybe it's a tourist NI poster, right? To say, rather than it being, don't go to Northern Ireland, it's saying, come, you'll be very, very welcome. We are, yeah.
I have family from Canada, and when they come over, the last time they were here, one of my cousins said to me, you just make fun of each other. That's how you speak to one another here, is it? Like, that's banter. That's what we call banter. But it seems like it's very unique to the island itself, I suppose, as a whole, that we do have fun and build relationships with each other by taking the mick, and I know that's an Northern Irish phrase, but taking the mick out of one another.
Well, it is. Completely, Kelly, completely. And I think, I've thought about this, and what I'm sharing with you today is my view on how I feel we connect and communicate. And I think if you were to go to, I've lived in London, I've lived in Dublin, I lived in different cities around the UK and Ireland, and so I believe I have some objectivity when it comes to Northern Ireland. I haven't stayed in Northern Ireland all my life, inside looking out. I've also been out looking in, and what I've seen a lot is, for example, in London, where I lived for years, in lots of parts, friends could come up to one another and say to each other, hey, how are you? You're not looking so well. I care about you. What can I do for you? There's a real, almost a straightforwardness sometimes in the language. I'm talking about London here, whereas I think we're saying the same thing here, but we don't have the language. We have the slagging, we have the banter. That's what's been passed on intergenerationally to us. But we're saying the same thing. We're saying, I care about you. I've noticed that you're not looking so well today. You've got a face on you like, huh? I've noticed that you're not yourself. Wise up is saying, can you please take a moment and reflect on what you've thought, what you've said. So our language is different, but it's fundamentally the same thing. It's, I care about you. I've noticed. I'm here for you. How can I help? That's fundamentally our narrative, wrapped up in a bit of slang and a bit of banter and so forth. That's kind of what I'm seeing, or what I have seen over the years when I've been out of Northern and I'm back in. It's refreshing. Love it, because people are friendly. It's informal. There's no pressure. There's no you have tos. There's no. It's just very, very relaxed, and I think that's where we win as a nation.
Yeah, that was the thing that I was sort of trying to get at, was the ability to make fast friends through sort of informal language and sort of just poking fun at one another. You're very quick to build relationships, I think, that way.
Absolutely.
Rather than being very formal.
Exactly, and the if I just quite cleverly swing us nicely back to the book, so in the book I talk about, or write about rather, the similarities and the differences between the sense of humour in each of the counties, and what's consistent about each one is that friendliness and that openness and that desire to connect. I keep repeating that because I believe that fundamentally, that in all of our banter and crack and wit and storytelling, that's what's at the root of it. That's what we're trying to do fundamentally, is to connect. And you could spend time talking to some of the oldest psychologists in the world, and they'll say that our fundamental human beings' fundamental purpose on earth is to connect. So we're doing what human beings do. We're not doing anything different. We're just doing it in a way that's quite unique and quite nuanced compared to other, which is lovely, compared to other countries.
Yes. And even just listening to you talking a little bit about research there, how long has this been in the works? Is this years of work?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And there's about 13 different answers to that, depending on how you ask it. But the idea of the book's been around about 10 years. The notion of writing this has been around 10 years. But the actual whole process has probably been over the last 3 years. And that's kind of what I call field work. But as I said earlier, I've got siblings in 4 out of the 6 counties, so I'm going there anyway. And what I'm doing is I'm just taking notes and I'm paying attention. I tend to be quite observant and quite present, so I tend to listen and pay attention and write. I make notes. And then this year was the year where I had it. You can imagine, in a lot of different places I've written. And then I put a lot of effort into this year to try and pull it into something cohesive. And what we're seeing now published on Amazon, by the way, is the finished piece, the first edition, let's just say. And then what I'd love to do, although this isn't your question, but I'm trying to plug this, is ideally for me, this is kind of like if I use cinema vernacular, this is kind of like the trailer. It's kind of an introduction, a dipping your toe in the water type of book. And what I'd love to do, if there's enough interest, is to then write the book per county. So really go in a bit deeper and go around the towns, so go up to Cushendall and stuff, and head around different counties in Armagh or Armagh, the little towns, and speak to people and gather more and go in depth. But that requires a commitment, and that commitment can only happen if this book is a success. So that's the plan,
That's the dream.
Yeah.
What was it like seeing it? Like, I can only imagine what it would be like to see that amount of work. I know you're saying really it's only the last 3 years that you've knuckled down and you've started work on the book, but to have a dream doing something for 10 years and then to see that physically produced must be incredible.
Well, yeah, no, it is, and absolutely. It's a good observation. It's like your child being born. I'm just, for everyone listening, I'm not trying to compare writing a book to, these are very, very different. A book's harder. That was a joke. But the bringing it to life was amazing. But seeing it, come to life was incredible. What I found, probably, to be honest, what I found more interesting was the process, because I tend to be very, you may have noticed, quite chatty. I tend to like to connect and talk and meet people, I lived in London for years where you couldn't talk to anyone. You sit on the tube, you walk down the street, you basically have to sit on your hands. And I had this 10 years of build up of I could not talk to anyone, and I came back here and I went nuts, and I talked to everyone, and that helped accelerate. But that process was amazing to talk to different people and take that feedback, how different we are, and yet we're still the same. So, but yeah, to answer your question, bringing it to life was wonderful. But for me, the process was probably more enjoyable, if I'm honest. The journey rather than the destination was probably a little bit more.
Sounds like the most fun field work anybody could ever
Oh
do.
yeah. Yeah, well, so when you tell people, it's interesting, when you tell people that you're writing a book about sense of humour, everybody's got a joke, right? Everybody. So from the oldest woman to the youngest guy, but 90% of that material I could only tell you on late night Armagh I, right? We couldn't do it at this, unfortunately. Right? So the 10% that's clean makes the book. A lot of that makes the book, but I could write so many more. There's so much more material, because everyone's got and some of the stuff. I mean, you're just laughing ahead of. So you're right. The fieldwork wasn't always easy. Let's be honest. It wasn't. I didn't coast it, but there were times when I just was like, I love this, but I work in a job which is not this, and the dream for me would be to be able to do this full time.
When I'm listening to you talking about what's next in terms of doing books, maybe focusing on county by county, I can't help but feel there might be a market for that explicit version of the humour.
Yeah. I don't know how.
I think that.
I don't know how my mum would feel. I might have. Yeah. So, but yeah, you're not wrong. Yeah, you're not wrong. There's some real.
If that was 90% of the jokes you were being told, there's a market for it.
There may be. I need to figure out the channel, because it probably won't work. It probably work better in another format, maybe not a book or something. Yeah, but hey, it's there and it's written down and it's scribbled in some illegible. My writing tends to be like a doctor's writing, so it's a bit only I can read it, right? So it's there and it's parked up. But everyone's got some material. I mean, I spoke to, I don't know how many people I spoke to, but it wasn't thousands. It was a very, very small. Imagine you scale that up. Suddenly, and the other point I'd add, if I may, is, and someone actually said this to me, we are a nation of storytellers, so it's not a surprise that that we have stories and anecdotes, but also a lot of it's getting lost. Now, I think with the arrival of the internet, social media and stuff, people in Northern Ireland are looking outside, whereas before we only looked in our own county, and we shared stories, and we copied behaviour from our parents and grandparents. Now people are taking behaviour from external sources. Yeah, I don't know why I'm doing that, but I hope it looks cool on the. So their influences are no longer the local community or the local, and we're losing a lot of stories. We're losing a lot of material. We're losing a lot that's bleeding out. And this book, or books like this, they help us to retain it forever, for life, and that's suddenly it becomes a moral obligation to do something like this for us, for Northern Ireland, we don't want to become another Starbucks where we're all the same. Yeah. We want to be unique and different and remain like that. So this is also a shout out to the historians here that we need to be conserving this, and books like this will do just that, in my opinion.
It'd be interesting to see if in 10 years' time you still had a focus on humour, to do maybe a bit of that field research again and see have things changed or have they progressed in any way. Just as a side note, I just think that would be an interesting.
I agree, and I'm going to put a note in my calendar from the 4th of November 2034. I had to pay attention there to do just that. I think you're not wrong. I do think it evolves. It ebbs and flows, doesn't it? So, and I think a lot of the people I spoke with in terms of demograph, it was probably primarily the kind of 30 plus age group, because under that age when I go up, they just run away for some reason. I don't know whether maybe I need to change my cologne, but there was it tends to be the older have a bit more time for you. The younger ones are too busy on their phones and I'm generalising here. I don't know what your age group is, but that tends to be what I people older that had a bit more time. But we're becoming a bit more. I see we're becoming more global. Every country, that's Starbucks analogy, because the web has now opened up the world, so the world's so much closer together than it was. Hey, it's a great thing, but we have to just be mindful of our own culture, and our background and our heritage. That's so important. And as you get older, that becomes more important. When I was in my 20s, I didn't care really. I cared about a couple of things. but they weren't about, my footprint and my heritage. But now later I'm thinking, well, and my daughter and my family, and I want, I want that retained, because we are a lovely, unique wee country, and I wouldn't want us to be, I wouldn't want us to be another small America, or, God forbid, imagine.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. But here, tell me this. I know you've sort of touched a little bit on hopes and dreams for the book, but if you had to say it sort of really concisely at this point in time, what would those be?
Hopes and dreams for the book. Yeah, there's a couple. I tend to be a bit of a dreamer, and I'm okay with that, because I'm at an age now where I'm at peace with, if you aim high enough, even if you fall short, you get a good result. So for me, the ideal would be moving on to a more detailed version of the book, where you have a book per county, so that it becomes a bit more rich and a bit more inclusive, brings in a lot more. I'd love to go around and market that book around Ireland, the UK. I'd love to be in a position where I could just take that out to the masses, and share the stories and the wisdom. And then ultimately, hey, go global with it. And then a friend of mine said to me, why not do a documentary? Maybe a documentary will be in the offing, where you go round and you record people. And I thought that's a really interesting angle there, where you're actually doing that actually almost live. Yeah, where you're taking it out to the people, and because this is about people. This isn't about me necessarily. I'm just a channel. This is about the people of Northern Ireland sharing their stories and showing the world how wise and how funny we are. We've got so much to offer the world stage. So I'm simply just the messenger. That's it. And
Yeah.
I love to spread the message. That's important. Yeah.
Sounds good. And you're going to hate me for this one, but I'm really going to put you on the spot
Okay.
and ask, are there any favourite anecdotes, favourite tidbits, favourite
Yeah.
jokes from the book?
There is one. There is one in particular that's my favourite, and there are many in there that I love. And this was my favourite because I was passing through Enniskillen. I have I had an uncle who was in a care home in Leitrim, and we would go through Enniskillen quite a lot. And I would just stop. We'd stop for coffee, and I'd jump out and I'd talk to people. So it's what I do. It's my thing, I suppose. And there was a guy there called, his name was Ian, but he introduced himself as, "Hi, I'm Ian with an I." This is how he introduced himself, and I thought, this is comedy gold. This is just,
Yeah.
because and then I was thinking, how else would you spell it? Yeah, and it took me like 30 seconds to get through, to process that, and then he was laughing. Anyway, he was sitting there, a pair of wellies, standing, just leaning over a fence, pretty typical. Anyway, he told me this story. He says, I said to him, well, I'm doing this book and about the sense of humour in Northern Ireland, and what do you have a view on the Enniskillen, the Fermanagh sense of humour? It's a typical question I ask. And he said, let me tell you a wee story. And he said, Fermanagh people, I found, by the way, what I love about their humour, it's very local. It's always about people they know. Yeah, it's not about, it's not strangers. It's wonderful. It makes it more intimate. So he said about like two guys, I think it was Paddy and John, who lived down the lane from him. He said they went up to the Big Smoke and they went for a job interview. And he said very seriously, Kevin McAleer, sort of straight-faced, went for a job interview in a company, and Paddy and John, they both were in the waiting room, and Paddy was brought in first, and John was in the waiting room. So, and the man interviewed Paddy, and then at the end of the interview he said, I've got two more questions before we'll let you go. I'd like you to use the following words in a sentence. It's kind of part of our process. And Paddy said, okay. And he said, the first word I want you to use is the word great. And Paddy said, I woke up this morning, I was feeling great. And the interviewer said, brilliant. That's just wonderful. It's textbook,
Mm-hmm.
And he said, the second word is create. And Paddy thought for a second. He said, woke up this morning feeling great, and I wanted to create a really good impression. And the interviewer sort of, almost went to high five him. He was delighted with his performance. So he walks Paddy out. He says, John, come on, your turn. John comes in, interviews him, goes through the whole process, and at the very end, he said, right, we've got last part of the interview. Just want to ask you two questions to use these words in a sense. And he says to John, okay, first word is great. And John said, I thought about it. He said, I bought a coat the other day and it fitted me great. And the interviewer sort of shook and said, okay, we can get, that's okay, we can take that. And the second word he said is fascinate. And John thought about it. He says, "Oh, I bought a coat the other day and it fitted me great. There were 9 buttons on it, but I could only fasten 8." Right? And at the moment when he told me that, and Ian with an I, it took a moment, and then I just burst out. Yeah, and it's one of those jokes that on the whole way home I was laughing and chuckling and then telling everyone. Simple, funny, witty, right from that, but really droll. And he told a story, and he spun a story. So I love that. That's my favourite, because it's just everything about it's gorgeous. I think that story. Yeah, really nice.